If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The following podcast is brought to you exclusively by the Rad Rob Radio Network.
This is PBA champion Kyle Troop.
Hey y'all, Jacob Ledrup here.
Jeff Riggles here from 11thframe.com.
Hey guys, Chuck Ritchie here, formerly of Bowl TV.
Hey guys, this is Ryan Schaefer of track staff at Valley Bowling Center in Waverly, New York.
And you're listening to Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr.
Yo, the boys from Straight Up 5, Rad Rob, Dr Ocho, and of course JP Jr.
Pick it out. Fear the fro, baby.
Welcome to Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. A hard-hitting, in-depth, cutting-edge look into the world of bowling. This podcast will not only cover all things bowling, but will also give you a raw look into real-life issues. You'll get unfettered access into the mind of one of the most gifted bowlers of this or any other generation.
Strike, and they claim it. Somebody does it!
So without further ado, let's introduce you to the hosts of the show. Rad Rob, Rob Francois. Rad Rob, Rob Francois. Dr. Ocho. Dr. Ocho. And the incomparable Johnny Petraglia Jr. Johnny Petraglia Jr.
Hey guys, welcome back to Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. This is episode 109. We have a very special guest tonight. As always, I am your host, Rad Rob, Rob Francois. My machine tells me I'm right. See, I can't even get that right. I do indeed love chicken from Popeyes, though. This is episode 109. As I said, we have Steve Jaros as our guest here. But before we bring him in, need to introduce my first co-host. He is the man with the golden mask. He has the largest arms on this podcast. He is the resident doctor of Straight Up 5. Don't let him fool you. He actually is a smart guy. It is the one and only Dr. Ocho. What's going on, Och?
You even got your Popeyes chicken button wrong, because I would think that would be something you could do in your sleep.
That's pretty sad, isn't it?
Given the copyright infringement and just to be able to nail that. It's got to be. It's your alarm clock for one. I know, right? Don't you have that set as your ringtone, your alarm clock, everything?
My text alert. Yes, it's all correct.
So and then you hit the. You're allowed to be right once in a while. So at least you gave yourself that. Who else is here, Rob?
Nico's in the house. Crambone's in the house. We got Amanda Moore in the house. Brett Loringer was here early before we were. We did not ditch the Facebook feed. We're still here. Thank you for joining us on YouTube. Let's introduce the star of the show. He is my other co-host. He is the sexiest man in the world. He is the son of a living legend. A legend in his own right, honestly. And he's loved by many. Hated by few. That's all. I got nothing new. Johnny P, what's going on, brother?
You almost hit that perfectly on the head, dude. I think it's more like hated by a ton and loved by a few. But I appreciate it very much.
Good to have you here. Good to see you. You're looking amazing, as always, as you always do.
I made it home safe from Las Vegas. That's a success in my book.
That is a success in your book, yes, absolutely. Nice chicken you got there behind you. I assume that's Lucas.
This was the best part of my trip to Vegas. Yeah, I named him Lucas on a random night with all 25 members of the Strike It Rich Pro Shop team. But somehow, some way, I landed on Lucas. I was looking for something more creative, like Chester Kane or something at least chicken related. But it was the best part of my trip because it was gifted. I actually kind of commandeered it, but then it was gifted to me by, I guess the only kid I'll ever have, and that's Derica. So wanted to thank her for the screaming chicken. And it goes up to 45 seconds, which, needless to say, when they had to open my suitcase to check on the way home, it made for a pretty exciting experience for TSA. So
I make that noise so often in the late evening in the Ocho household, just to let you know, folks.
I was going to say that also sounds like me.
And JP has heard it many time.
Sounds like me right now with the kidney infection that I have. So
that's really annoying. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you stop pissing needles.
It sucks. I mean, it's like having kidney stones, but you're not going to pass anything, so it's never going to end until the antibiotics finally get it to work. But if I had to step out a couple times during the show, everybody, I'm trying to be professional, but duty calls. But,
leave the hot mic on, please. I
want to hear it.
Oh my God, son of a Texas, fall off, would you?
That's Columbus that hurt.
Oh, that's horrible. In any event, we do have our special guest here. He is in the green room. He is bowling this weekend, so he's joining us from his hotel room. Look, guys, I mean, we had the best guests ever, right? Elise was on a cruise. We got Steve from his hotel. Belmo was from his hotel.
JP was from his hotel, for Christ's sakes.
That's true. See, there you go. Yeah. But as always, we do have a highlight package I want to play for our special guests. So
we'll be back in 30 minutes, and here we go. Welcome to Straight Up 5.
Here's the highlight reel from the career of Steve Jaros.
Can't win, Chris. Steve Jaros is going to win the tournament. Even if Nair makes the split, the 3-6-7, he would finish with 201. As you see the ball sliding by, Nair sends it too wide. 3-6-7, winner Steve Jaros in his first championship round.
And the only consolation for Andy Nair, also a non-winner, is $20,000. So you see Mom Jaros and Wendy, Steve's wife, fifth. $38,000, a week's all-paid vacation for in Plaza. We'll be back home after this.
Credit Kevin McGear with a very cerebral shot.
Back-to-back weeks with pressure, 300 to 279 last week. Mike Albee over David Ozio. Now, difference of 43,000, winning or losing.
Shanko, he has left the 2-4-8-10. Now what faces Kevin McGear is he must make the 2, 4, and 8. Forget the 10 pin. Go for the tie. That's exactly what it is. Steve Jaros looks at the scoreboard. He says McGear must get 3 pins to tie. Oh, just does. All right, here's what happens now. It's a 224 tie. We're going to bowl the 9th and 10th frames. Steve Jaros will get up and bowl 1 frame. Steve Jaros, to take all the cash to $38,000 and go against Gene Stuss in the challenge, needs a spare and 7. Anything less, McGear wins the championship.
All right. 3rd seed surviving this morning's roll-off.
A nice trip to wherever you said it was, Bahamas or Hawaii. They have choice hotels everywhere, and a chance for $25,000 more in the challenge match. There it is, a lock.
Oh, yes. 9 and a winner. Steve Jaros, 49. Kevin McGear, 36. The Summer Classic champion is Steve Jaros of Illinois.
Maybe I'm keeping you. That's a crucial mistake right there. The ball. 9 pins to win.
Get back, get back, get back. Oh, it did come back. Jaros hugs all around on this Valentine's Day. We'll talk to Steve coming up here in a minute.
trying to become number 75 with just a mark to win in his first ever TV appearance.
Any kind of mark, he's your champion.
A title on the line for Chris Johnson.
Unbelievable.
Look out! What a split he's got to face here. What a break for Steve Jaros, and just like that, he is a champion in Toledo. And the kids missed it.
Best weight shoulder to shoot 235. Stranger things have happened on the PBA Tour in the 10th frame.
Six-bagger. You better believe it. And that's a winner. Steve Jaros gets congratulations from his wife, June. His 5th career PBA title comes today in Dallas.
Impressive.
Couldn't have come at a better time.
QLinkXZone.com, baby. Being displayed by Steve Jaros. He showed absolutely no emotion. This shot right here was the big shot that all but clinched the title for him, and he showed no emotion going dead flush. All he needs is a mark in the 10th frame, and this tournament is his.
That's what he needs. Looking for the 7-bagger. 10th frame. Bang. A little bit high. Man. Does it again. Wow.
Can you believe it?
For every single show and every tournament next year and years beyond, right? That's 3 for 3.
Can you say homeschool?
All right. What can I say? Thank you, Dynasty. Unbelievable. Thank you.
In the last few weeks, but he needs a mark. Any kind of a spare or strike, he'd certainly like to do it in one ball, a strike. And he will win this year's Tournament of Champions, $100,000 and a 2-year exemption.
Unbelievable, Brian. Dave, this guy didn't think he was going to have a job about a month ago, and now he's your Tournament of Champions champion.
Incredible moment for Steve Jaros. Wife June, the twins are going to get a very early birthday present. They turn 6 May 25th. Just needs 5.
Yes! Yeah! Evan, Hannah, it's for you guys. I love you. Yes.
Kids, there's your birthday present. Dad is a major champion for the first time in his career as Steve Jaros takes the 2005 PBA Dexter Tournament of Champions.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our very special guest, Steve Jaros. Steve, good evening, sir.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good to have you here. Thank you for,
that was quite the video.
Quite a career, and honestly, that TOC is pretty much what's going to get you into the Hall of Fame this year. So,
yes,
it's a very special thing that you accomplished there. That's back in my own stopping grounds from Connecticut too, the Mohegan Sun. I grew up out of Bradley Bowl and Windsor Locks, so I frequented Mohegan Sun quite often. That was a really cool place to win your major.
It was, and it was a great. I was fortunate enough in all the years that I bowled on tour to bowl in a lot of different settings, and the arenas were always my favorite. The electricity of the crowd. Erie was the first one that I had bowled in, and the fans were just fantastic. And they followed that along to Connecticut, and every arena that I've bowled at's been amazing.
Absolutely right. Yeah, Erie was one of my favorites to watch. That was the Splitfire Open that Danny Wiseman won. Unfortunately,
he beat me.
He beat you on that one. But yeah, I mean, the stadium crowds were definitely a cool thing. Johnny, what you got for our very special guest, brother?
I guess first and foremost, thanks for not only joining us, but not only rushing into your hotel room, but hopping immediately on before you even had time to unpack your toiletry bag. So, it's great to see you, and obviously we'll get to more of this discussion later, but Congratulations on your absolutely overwhelmingly well deserved Hall of Fame induction.
Thank you.
The Hall is lucky to have you, and I hope that the family as well. I guess as far as the first question, I actually, you know what? I want you, Rob, to read the first question from the fans after this one that I have, because I'm definitely not stealing the show again.
Sure.
Steve, I've always been an admirer of you, because you got to remember you were one of the most recognizable faces of Brunswick tour staff when I was in my I want to be a pro bowler years, the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
When you mentioned Erie, I think I remember you leading that tournament, and I want to say the ball you were using was a Raven Quantum during qualifying, but it was something dark in the danger zone era.
Yeah.
And in that time period, the thing I loved most about your game was how under it and loaded you were, and how you would actually have to collapse your arm behind your ear before you would reopen it, because you had so much pop at the bottom.
Right.
And then as the years progress, I noticed you significantly get more on the side of it, and that's exactly what Ocho's doing.
Exactly.
Of the elbow.
Yep.
That's, what was that all about? What made that change happen? What was the whole process behind that?
Well, the whole follow through was something that I had my entire life. I learned to bowl that way. That was the whole thing. Just follow through all the way through your target, and that's where I got a lot of the power and the hit came from that. What changed over the years as lane conditions had changed, and as I was changing and getting a little bit older, it was harder to keep up with some of the rev rate that I needed to do. Actually, it might have been at Carolier when we were practicing in between match play rounds, when all the guys that didn't make the cut would get out there and bowl in between. John Jowdy was out there working with some of the players, and he just kind of came up to me and he asked me, if I wanted to work on anything, if there's anything that I had any questions. And he never really liked my follow through. He never really liked the way I hit it. He thought I was hitting up on the ball, and he liked to have the ball get down into the lane a little bit smoother and a little bit longer. And it took me a while to kind of grasp what he was talking about until I started shooting some spares. And he's like, that's the follow through that I want, because my spare shot, it was just long. I didn't do anything to it. And he tried to incorporate that more into my game, where I could load up on it and actually do a little bit less to it, and the ball would save up energy better. And that I had done that change right before I had that really big year on tour where I'd won the 3 times in 1 year. That was at the end of the video there. And it was really weird, because I started throwing it a lot straighter, and it literally made all the patterns almost look the same to me for the rest of that season, which was amazing. So that's kind of where that came into. And now I'm kind of still on the side of it a little bit more. I think that's just age.
Sure.
I wouldn't mind getting back to where it was, because that seems to be where the game's at. Even on the senior tour, the PBA 50 stuff, you still have to shape it a little bit more. And I've been working on trying to get that back a little bit more.
I wanted to always know that, because you were dominant in both ways of those styles. So, and that's pretty rare and to me pretty awesome. So, no, really, one of the guys that a significant change in their release, but yet still managed to tackle the tour the way, titles on the way he threw it under it, the way he threw it out of it, and you don't see that. You know what I think is the most comparable, I guess, in a recent day and age is kind of like what Mike Fagan did. Mike Fagan used to be called the king of swing. If you look at the last 4 or 5 years of his career out there, he was as straight as Barnes was half the time. With that, he went from getting really through it at the bottom and kind of just keeping lines more in front of him. So I'd say that's more of that modern day transition when the guy was able to perfect both sides of the coin, or both different ways of doing it.
Yeah, it really made it more effortless to me, and it made it for me much easier to read the patterns, because it took the fronts out of play. Looking back at some of the videos, I did have a little bit of an up hit to it, but I grew up in the urethane era, and the first urethane era, and it was a different way you had to throw it, and you had to shape it different. And it's oddly enough, I like going straight up 5 now.
Was it difficult though? Was it because usually when somebody changes their mechanics, and honestly I don't know enough about how mechanically you change, because everything was the same until your arm came to here, basically, until your arm was almost at 45 degrees after the release. But was it a difficult thing for you to do, or you were just able to seamlessly kind of just, instead of just popping at it like a almost like a softball pitch,
Right.
you'd come around it and let the ball do a lot of the work, I guess?
Well, I mean, all the years that I bowled on tour, there's so much muscle memory that you develop that you really had to retrain yourself to feel that this is the new normal.
So it can't be that easy. That's what I mean.
It wasn't.
You made it look.
No.
That's what I was getting at. I was trying to pay you a half-assed compliment there, but
I appreciate
because it can't be that easy to change some habits.
No, and it wasn't, because I mean, I had to really think in my mind when I was going to the line, I felt like I was almost cutting the ball short, where I wasn't following through at all. Almost more like a Stu Williams type of a thing.
You're afraid
like
the ball's just going to like
it.
sit there and just do
Exactly.
nothing.
So I really had to resist the urge to grab it and hit up on it. And it took a few weeks. And luckily Jowdy was out there almost every week. He was repping for Columbia at the time. Eventually just became just a staple out there of people that he would coach. And I was honored that I caught his eye and that he wanted to work with me, and we had great success. And
you just said a few weeks. That's something that could take somebody 2 years to try and perfect. And it took a couple of weeks. And then, of course, I had my, it's not like riding a bike, Steve. Let's be honest here.
That's true. But when you look at the course of a season, we probably bowled the equivalent of 2 league seasons.
That's true. You're not wrong. You're not
wrong. We did have a lot of games. So it wasn't without work.
You pack 150 games in a week, and I guess you do get the reps in. I get it.
It's definitely not the same now as it was back in the day. I mean, there was so much more that they had to go through to make even match play or make the cut.
Yeah.
I mean, they bowled so many games.
And I think it's coming back around again. They're starting to see longer formats again. It's getting to be more of a tour where you're seeing guys bowl different cities, which I always enjoyed.
I just wish they would make it longer. I mean, or have summer tours or winter tours again. I don't know why they don't. I guess just TV contracts probably. But I mean, back in the day on ABC, I mean, you had a long tour. I mean, whether it was the winter tour, the summer tour, and then when ESPN took over, you guys were still bowling in the summer. So I mean, you were
we didn't have
bowling
very much time off.
Exactly, and you had more chances to win titles. We had Belmo on the show, and he talked about the old guys. We kind of asked him what would have happened. Why did bowling lose ABC, or why did ratings go down, or why couldn't they get sponsors? And he kind of put it on the old guard, said that you guys didn't really take care of, or even realize that it was going to go away. But I mean, he kind of said you guys didn't take care of what you had. Is there any credence behind that?
Well, I mean, I guess there could be. I mean, obviously, it's a different time now. We didn't have the social media presence that we had then. We weren't able to create the fan base that some of these guys are able to get now.
Right.
A lot of what had happened with changing the ownership a couple of times, and the ABC thing was a sponsorship deal that I can't remember everything that happened for the reason why we were no longer on them, but I know they were paying us rights money to be on the show,
right?
To be on the network, which a lot of that money was being used to help finance the summer tour and some of the fall tour. I mean, a lot of it was being used to help the tour go throughout the years. And as the economic stuff started changing and sponsorships started dropping out, is when it kind of started happening. And could they have done something different? Maybe, but that's people smarter than me.
It's an interesting topic, and every single time that we bring it up, I don't want to stick on this too long because I know we have a fan question, Rob, but Steve, when Jason was on, he said the one thing that really, really got me was he said, look at the 2-hour shows now compared to the 90-minute shows of the ABC telecast. And he says, and look at how many commercials there are nowadays compared to how many are on the older shows.
Mm-hmm.
So after going back and studying, I realized there's a hell of a lot less in the 90-minute segment. But every single commercial on there, it's like there's Pep Boys, there's AC Delco, there's Quaker State, there's all the Budweiser. They were all from the big sponsors of the tour at that time. And now, if you get lucky, we get a couple Bolero commercials, we get a couple, Go Bowling commercials,
right?
And then they kind of just replay a few more. So I guess my crazy question is I feel like we had the sponsors, and nowadays they don't have the sponsors.
Right.
So I don't really understand where he was going with that, because are they jamming that much more? Is it that much more important to have kind of see what I'm shooting at here, Rob?
Yeah. I'm thinking if we had 2-hour shows back then, we probably could have got more commercial airtime for a lot of those guys too. Because you're right, there were a lot of different sponsors that we had. You know, Tums was a sponsor, and True Value, and AC Delco. I mean, all the tournaments, they had sponsor specific tournaments, and they all had airtime on the shows every week.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What was more memorable, winning the TOC or throwing the 300 on TV?
They were both very memorable. The 300 was memorable for a few reasons because it almost didn't get aired. It really got. It probably shouldn't have gotten aired just based off of some of the technical stuff that happened on the truck, but it was by sheer luck that we actually had a copy of it. Back then, the shows were tape delayed by a day, so we filmed that on Saturday for the show to be shown on Sunday. And we were in Chattanooga. The owner of the center, the manager, had asked if they could put a VHS copy into the recorder so they can get a copy for the center, just like the raw footage. And if they hadn't have done that, we probably wouldn't have had the show, because what had happened is there's something had happened with the cables where they had got reversed, and the master copy had all the master copy had all the commercials burned into it, so they weren't able to use that, or it had the time code burned into the master copy, so that when they go to edit the show, they weren't able to use that because you had this big time code that was across the bottom. VHS copy didn't have that, although the quality wasn't quite as good. They did some editing and they cleaned it up a little bit, and a couple weeks later they showed it at 1:30 in the morning without any advance notice. But it's been kind of a historic event now, because if you did happen to catch it, it was great. If not, it was on ESPN Classic for a long time, and it'll live forever on YouTube.
Since I didn't know it was tape delayed, when did you find, like, obviously you want, like, oh my God, all my friends are going to see what I just did. When did we tell you that, hey, just so you know, like, when did you actually find out?
So we had,
all right, here we go.
We had just bought a motorhome to travel. My wife was pregnant at the time. We were expecting twins, and we had a fifth wheel that we're traveling in. We just upgraded to a motorhome so we can make it easier to travel. So those 2 weeks, she happened to be out with me, and she had witnessed the 300 game. And we drove home from Chattanooga right after the show, drove through the night, stopped a couple times, and literally pulled into my driveway 5 minutes before the show came on. We all run in. We had our family and friends over. We turned the show on, and they're showing car wrecks. And I actually called. We were in Erie the next week, so I called the press room. They're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, we had a problem with the show." That's how I found out.
Thinking about it, I'm getting mad just thinking about it. Walking in the house.
Like, of all the things, like, what are the odds like that particular part got messed up? Like, that's
like when I was in high school and I won a wrestling match, like, I'd be mad if it wasn't in the paper. Like, I can't imagine what this would be like. Like, this is an actual professional sport that was supposed to be televised. Oh my gosh.
I know. And the fact, I shoot 300, I win the title, and there was speculation as to whether they were going to pay the bonus for the 300 game because it wasn't technically televised. And the PBA actually put that to rest, and they had the check out actually by the end of the week, which is probably the fastest they've ever paid the bonus for that.
I bet if social media was around, they probably would have scrutinized that more than anything. They'd have been like, no way. He probably just put the X's in, and they just wanted to get a big story.
Yeah.
They get now when we have to wait an extra 20 minutes because they're picking high players or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that really how it's pronounced?
High-a-lie?
High-lie, yeah.
You're right.
Are you the only one to throw 300 and win? Johnny's shaking his head now.
I don't know. Probably not. It wasn't for the title, but all the shot 300.
Win the whole tournament, because usually
didn't Bob Benoit and Bob Benoit, right?
300 for the title. Mike Albee beat David Ozio 300 to 79 for the title.
Wichita 93.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
so it's a good question though.
It's very rare because we've seen a lot of people throw 300 and then just dump it the next game.
It's a bit of a letdown.
Your adrenaline goes
the law of
here.
averages still kind of like work their way in there. That's what it is.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
Right before that show, I was changing the grips on my spare ball, and Art McKee was the ball rep out there, and we're at the workout table, and I'm like, well, I hope I don't need this, and I didn't for one game.
That power torque seemed to be a very popular ball. It seemed like everybody was throwing it at that time. We're big fans, obviously, of the OG power torque, but it worked pretty well for you.
That was a great ball. That was the first time that I'd won with a reactive ball, because that was right when everything was changing. I mean, my first title was with the Blue Hammer, and the reactive balls really hadn't been coming out yet. They were starting to. So that was one of my first ones. The Beast was another one that I threw that week, which is a great reactive ball. And they hooked a little bit at Edmond there. I had some recovery, so it was kind of cool to see myself hook it again.
Steve, real quick, do the reactive balls make you also kind of take your hand out of it? Is that one of the things? I don't know. Maybe you.
They can.
That might have been one of the reasons why the change went this way.
Yeah, and I actually was able to throw the reactive for quite a while before I had to kind of adjust to that, because we were going through particle, we were going through other reactive, but there were a lot of guys that had a hard time adjusting to that reaction because it was so much stronger. So some of the power players that made their living being able to do something different than everybody else could were all of a sudden having trouble controlling this, and everybody else made the lanes look stupid for a while. So
I was going to ask you that because a lot of people that came, you're kind of in between both eras, but I mean, a lot of guys that came from the 80s throwing urethane did have trouble. I mean, you're talking the best in the world. Had trouble throwing reactive resin, but some guys like you were able to figure out. Johnny's dad was able to figure out. He threw 300, during the reactive era. So. What did you kind of do? I mean, did you throw a lot of practice games with it? I mean, like when you knew this technology,
2 weeks, those hooked.
A couple weeks.
Shut up. When you knew this tech was coming out, I mean, were you a little worried?
Not at first. I mean, because it was still the early versions of those still weren't super strong. They were completely different. I mean, when the Excalibur first came out, we saw the ball in the show for the first time. Oh my gosh! I mean, the guys are recovering the ball from the weeds. I mean, they were coming out of nowhere, and it was cool to watch. That was the first time we saw 2, 4, 8, 10.
Yeah, that was the 92 AC Delco, Steve. They're watching Mark McDowell throw that.
Oh my gosh,
that show. Mark McDowell, 92 AC Delco. That's what Steve's talking about right now.
Yep.
But what he was saying, just going from my childhood, was I remember a solid 8 years of the Jaros follow through that I know. And that was all the way through, I'm going back through the danger zones when we had 2 condition danger zones, 10 pin with an orange pin or a purple pin. But we're talking through the T2s, the Sage Quantums, all the way up to I want to say you were almost already with Dynathane at the time when you started, or maybe even track. What was that ball, that Rev Master or whatever that blue thing was that you made TV with? I feel
yeah.
So what is that, 01, 02?
It was, it would have been yeah, exactly, right about 01, 02. Dynathane was who I was with at the time. I was with Track the year before that. I seemed to kind of follow Phil after all that. I mean, I was with Brunswick for a long time. I mean, actually, your dad was the one who offered me my first ball contract, and we were out on and it was really unsolicited because I'd just been out there trying to do what I could and just try to make a living out there. And he approached me one day, and they had evidently I caught their eye, and they offered
talent kind of knows talent too.
That's cool. My dad saw another guy with a mustache, glasses, and dark hair. He's like, this guy's perfect.
You have no idea how many times I got mistaken for him after that. I would literally throw a shot in a practice session, and somebody would turn around with the page turned to him. I'm like, all right, so you just saw me bowl, and I bowled with the right hand.
I'm right-handed.
But I would sign my picture. I'd flip it over to mine. But I would get him. I would get Albee. I'd get a few people. It had to be the glasses and the mustache.
Absolutely.
I see the Albee thing. That he could be like the mixer of you guys. He could be the mediator, basically.
Half of my friends on tour that I hung around with were calling me Johnny all the time. So
that's hilarious. When you were going into that tie with Kevin McGurr, what were you thinking? I mean, he let that split, and you're like, and I saw you look at the scoreboard, like what does he need to tie, right? Like, what was going through your mind at that point?
Brian Berg was sitting behind me for the whole show. We were kind of chatting in between shots, and I kind of lost the pair, I think, a little bit in the middle, and I got lined up. I think I threw the last 3 or 4 to give him in a position where he had to go strike spare. And once he threw the first strike, I'm like, well, that's probably it. And as soon as he 2-4-8-10, I looked over at the score sheet, and I'm like, he needs 3 of these to tie. And he's got to make it to win. He needs 3 to tie. And he almost took the 2-8 straight back off the 4. I mean, that would have been unusual. But it just gave me new life. And I just think the way the roll-off format is I believe I started on. I started on the lane that we just finished on, but now I mean he would have had the choice as to whether to start or not. I think that helped me because I just got off that off that lane rather, and I struck out, and I had the adrenaline going. So as soon as I put up the first strike and he didn't strike, I'm like, well, I can't get shut out, and it was pretty amazing. It was unexpected, but it was amazing.
And you almost tied Gene after that in the challenge match.
I did, and in that match, I completely forgot we had to bowl another match because we were still bowling. I was still coming down from the title match,
right.
And then we almost had the same scenario. He kind of nudged out the flat 10 at the end, and it was almost the same way. I lost a pair in the middle, and I think I punched out in the 10th again to force him to do something, and it didn't work out the second time. But
too bad. It would have been extra. What, 25 grand?
25, yeah. I was happy enough winning the title.
Exactly right. Johnny, have you two ever met personally over the years?
God,
okay,
yeah.
I figured you being an alley rat over the years, hanging out.
Oh my God, I don't know how many roller coasters we rode at the Six Flags event when we were filming it at Great Adventure. I mean, that was it's funny because you guys had Haugen on a couple weeks ago, and he was on the show. He was on our team, and he would ride out. He was riding the coasters with us, and I was sitting in the car with him for a few of them. And the whole way up, he's got his hands over his eyes. He's freaking out the whole way up. We get up to the top of the hill, and everything's off. He's just flying down the hill. He just didn't like the way up. But we rode a lot of the rides too. I mean, that was a great time.
That's kind of the way I am with coasters. I'll get on any coaster, but the ride up, I'm like 100%. I'm sure most people go through this. Either the whole thing's going to stop, and now I have to walk down grabbing a hand.
I would like that.
Or I'm the only seat that as soon as we're about to go over, the seat ejects.
The lap bar's going to go.
Those are obviously the two things that we out the wall, unless you're just, whatever. But anyway, Haugen, that was at Six Flags Great Adventure right here in New Jersey. You guys, you were on the global team wearing the 6-pack ab shirt.
Yeah. And the wife beaters the next day.
Yes. And King Dakar was the brand new one that shoots you out at like 80 miles an hour and takes you straight up 400 feet.
No,
and Haugen spent like an hour arguing with Robert Smith, who Robert, if you're still in the chat, you have to remind me. Haugen basically that's the only one he absolutely refused to get on because he knew he would have to wait at the top of the track for a little while before the actual drop, and it scared the shit out of him. Meanwhile, he lucked out because there was like a 2.5 hour wait, and the guys had to get back to the lanes.
Half the time we were there, you couldn't even see the top of the track because the clouds were so low.
Oh, wow.
I wanted nothing to do with that one. I wrote all the rest of them, though. I might have ruined
if you're listening, just so you know, we all still think you are a screaming chicken. We love you, though.
That's a funny story. Did anybody...
Johnny, I think I was there that day, by the way. Didn't I bring my nephew over there to watch that show?
There were so many recordings. It ran over several days.
Yeah, it was one of the days we were going into Parker's truck because somebody had jacked their neck up and everything, and I'm trying to do my thing. And
on the rides, probably.
Yeah, most likely.
That was 100% when I'm not sure if you and I were there on the same.
No, we totally were. It was just it was got to be like it was when Belmo first came out. Maybe like the following year was he like making his appearance there? I want to say
we were there 2 years, I think.
I want to say like 08-ish, 09-ish, something like that.
The first year we bowled it, it was they grouped us by age because they just literally went by age group. The second year they turned it into the Manufacturers Cup, and that's when Robert and Haugen and we were all the 900 global team got to bowl. So that I liked it better when I did it that way.
I remember CDB was there too. Did I get it right?
He was on the team with Dad.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yep.
Speaking of Parker,
and Dad flushed one, and he left a stone freaking 9. Oh my God, I remember. And he was mic'd up. He's like, "I gotta flush this one, Randy," and he buried it with a stone 9. That's all
right. You know what's crazy as we keep talking about all this, Steve? Does this ever happen to you, or am I just crazy and I need to be reminded of it? Like when people go back and say, "Oh, I remember that was this year," that was like, "Oh, I saw the Scorpions live, Love at First Thing, 1984." Just I remember what year it is based off the bowling balls. I remember you guys.
I had to use my nephew's age for this one, but I'm watching you. I do Steelers scores, so that's my thing. I get it. I totally get it.
Is that just strange? Like that's the only way I remember. Like I remember what year he threw the Sage Tour. I remember what year he shot 10 pins with, or I remember him leading the TSC in '96 because he was throwing a T2. Like that's the way my brain operates.
Right.
It's crazy, weird science.
Thank goodness they changed balls so quickly, so you have one for every year, and that's how you freaking line it up.
And now they're doing too many. I'm losing it.
Right. I know. I was telling my wife, it's like I can remember. I can't remember where I put my keys half the time, but I could tell you what I shot. At Landmark in the 4th frame against Webb. On the show.
That's hilarious.
That was a 2-pin, by the way.
Did you expect? I mean, no, actually, that's a stupid question. Nobody expected Parker to miss that spare to give you the opportunity to win. What was going through your head when that happened?
Well, Parker bowled an amazing game because that left lane was ugly. I don't remember exactly what happened in practice because I know Ricky Ward was on the show, Jason Couch was on the show, and the left lane was just god awful. And the spare that he missed was just, I think, kind of a fill shot. So I think it made the difference of me needing a strike and a 9 to win, which was huge. It's definitely uncharacteristic of him. But the fact that one of the shots that he threw, I mean, he should have doubled to win the tournament probably in that spot. And people don't realize how good he had to throw it on that lane. And he chose to finish on that lane. He was the tournament leader.
I don't miss the gold pins, that's for sure.
I got a set of them from the show for after.
Do you really?
Nice.
Yeah. Just looking at it, to me, I don't know, they were just gaudy. Johnny, what do you think of those pins?
At the time, I enjoyed them because at the King of the Hill that Matt Menente ran every month at Carolier, if you made it to the title match, he would throw in the gold pins. Nice. So it felt cool to bowl on them. Visibly, no. I like looking at black bowling balls and white pins, traditional like that. But I didn't dislike them. I did, but obviously, not Mike. I'll give them like a 5.5 out of 10. And I honestly think that they should have been a couple ounces heavier. I think they were at about like 310 from 3.6.
I think so. Yeah.
I think that we saw, I guess, a slight difference, but not enough to really distinguish. Like, hey, the greatest guys in the world are knocking down an extra 7 pounds a rack rather than however many ounces, 40 ounces is for whatever is in there. I think they could have been a little bit heavier.
Yeah, and they did move a little bit different. I mean, I thought they stayed a little bit lower, but yeah, you're right. They still were pretty lively, I thought.
Yeah. The thing that I've always been curious about, if anything, over the years as far as pins is how, like, when you guys are bowling on pro lane, the ring 10 is an extreme possibility, but it seems like every time you guys are on an HPL or an SPL service, there is no such thing as a ring 10. It's always either a flat 10. It's amazing the characteristics of different houses, what kind of strikes and leaves they produce compared to one another.
Right.
I'm sure
obviously the HPLs have a little more friction to them, so I think the balls tend to burn up a little bit more, and I think that's why you see that. And it seems like the gutter always will bounce a little bit more on the HPLs than they did on the Pro Anvil. Absolutely. And I think because the Pro Anvils tended to, I think at the time, be a little bit harder, they were a little bit cleaner through the front, and that would definitely create the angle for the ring 10s.
And what is the other thing, Steve, and I'm only bringing this up because it's an interesting topic. I think when I worked Capital for Brunswick, it was the SPL surface was 5/16 sandwich style, and the Pro Lane was 7/16 solid phenolic. So between the sponginess of the sandwich style compared to the solid and the extra eighth of an inch, that kind of answers partially the initial question, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and obviously, if it's a little bit more spongy, it's gonna absorb some of the energy from the ball, and I think that's gonna give you some friction too. And I think it just has something to do with the hardness of the lane too.
Throughout the course of your career, did you prefer a specific surface over another? I mean, obviously, we know you loved Edmund. You won there twice.
That was wood.
Oh, well, don't we all love that?
Yeah, I seem to always bowl well in the AMF centers. It seems like the pin decks and the side, the kickbacks always seem to carry. I could trip a lot of fours there. But I mean, over the years, we bowl on so many different things. I mean, the hardest thing was when we did bowl in an arena type setting. The install that was there was so true that it did seem like the balls, for me, I didn't see the ball as well in that big arena. I don't know if it's because of the high ceiling, but it always felt to me like I really wasn't like grabbing it enough, and I always caught myself trying to hit it harder than I thought I needed to, because I just think it might have been the visual perception of it. But I mean, some of the installs were great. I mean, I think all the installs were great. It just seemed like some of the scoring paces were higher than others. Erie was always huge. Some others were tough, but you could get to the pocket.
Sure. It's so funny that you say that, because obviously I was in Vegas for about 12 years, and I bowled league at South Point in the regular center.
Mm-hmm.
When they initially built the plaza, which is it's beautiful,
right?
You get that same exact thing that you just said, because they were so true.
Right.
You go from like being able to like really yak all over in the front of the lanes or do whatever you want, and going up there, it's like, whoa. It's not necessarily not going to hook, but it's like it's ice skating. It's a hockey puck off my hand. It's just so clean and so smooth. I'm assuming you're talking something like that on the arena settings.
For sure.
And did you make any shows where you bowled on a different surface at the center as opposed to what they installed in the arena? Or was it always the same surface?
I'm trying to think what Erie, if we bowled on the Brunswick install for the Erie show, because the Erie had the HPLs, I believe.
Erie definitely had the
you know what? I think they were AMF on the show there.
They were AMF on the show.
They were. I only remember that because of Learn and Learn the 1 year, Branham on the other show, and obviously Wiseman.
Right. The Masters might have been at Miller Park. That might have been a different one, because there were older HPLs at Bolero. And
you bowled on Kohler.
I think we had the different ones at Miller Park.
Interesting.
Which
did they play similar? So that's a great one right there, because
I think there's a pretty good chance they might not have put the same pattern out for the show as they did for the Masters. I'm not 100% sure. There was some rumor, some talk that obviously when we were there, they had some other matches that were going on at Miller Park. They had like a Legends match, like some matchups there, and the pattern was a little bit different than what we use in the Masters. And when we bowled the practice session for the Masters, the gutter hooked so much more than it did at Bolero that we weren't sure if that was the same thing, or if they had accidentally put the pattern out that they did for that other exhibition match, and they just decided to stay with it, or it could have just been the way the install was. But they were pretty wide open in the year that I finished second.
We've talked to sorry, Johnny. We've talked to a lot of the newer guys about how it is on tour now. There's a lot of camaraderie on the tour. A lot of guys are friends. They're kind of rooting for each other. Back in your day, I hate to date yourself and make you sound old, but back when you were on the tour, was it the same way, or were you guys more competitive? What was the vibe when you guys were on tour?
I think it was both. I mean, you always have rivalries where there's some guys that just don't mesh. I was fortunate enough the last few years that I bowled out there that we were part of the motorhome group, the trailer trash, so to speak, is what they call ourselves. But we had probably 14 people out there in fifth wheels and motorhomes that we had a whole little community, and everybody had their kids out there. And it was actually a lot of fun. I mean, and we would bowl each other. We're in competition against each other to try to make a living, but at the same time we're all friends off the lane. So I think they did a really good job of turning it on and off. We all understood that we're out there for a reason, but we're also coexisting, and we all have connections, with friendships.
Yeah, I mean, you're all putting food on tables too. I mean,
we all help each other out when we needed it, and it was. I've been on the side of the road in Denver with my fifth wheel, and one of them stopped and helped us out, and we've done the same for others. So
that's pretty cool.
It's still a family to me that we had out there, and I'm not sure if it's the same way with the tour now. I'm out of touch with that part of it, but I assume that you see these guys week in and week out, especially now that we're bowling more across the country and bowling more tournaments. I think you're going to see that develop more.
Can you imagine if they had social media back in the day with, like when Pete Weber throwing a tantrum or throwing balls out of the paddock at Bradley Bull or whatever? I mean, can you imagine some of the stuff that would people with their cell phones recording? I mean, you must have you bowled with some pretty unique people. Let's just say that.
It was a great time to be out there, and I'm sure it's not any different now, but it's just now, some of the stories that we've had and some of the things that we've got to do was fantastic. So, and some of that stuff's probably better not to see.
I think Johnny can agree with that. I'm sure. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, the reason I wanted to be on tour when I was 12, 13, 14 years old is because every single player out there always looked like they were having the time of their lives. There were always so many people at every single bowling center. Now, granted, I'm a little skewed because my dad's namesake tournament was at my home center, Carolier, the Great Carolier Lanes.
Yeah.
So that was 82 lanes, the most spectators, the Celebrity Pro-Am, the Junior Pro-Am. That's where me and AJ Kachuk bowled against Jerome Bettis and Leroy Horde. Just all the greatest memories ever. Wayne Webb running his karaoke in that huge bar afterwards, and I would be allowed in, and I would drink Shirley Temples or whatever the hell I was drinking. But I always had that VIP access badge at, in my eyes, like the greatest generation of talent. Everybody was so good. Mm-hmm. Everybody was going through the same resin transition. Everybody was molding their new games to what was being offered, and everybody just had passion. Everybody gave a shit in the locker room for better or worse, which, by the way, the smell of the paddock is like almost as sexy to me as hearing irons clank on the back of the golf cart.
Right. It's all those Luster Kings that you had running.
Yes. Luster Kings. We were talking about that, a couple of years ago about, Ocho never knew what a Luster King was. So,
you still see them now.
I thought I was the Luster King. I thought it was me.
You never knew what kind of.
Turns out I'm wrong. I'm literally
you never knew what your
wrong.
ball's going to look like when it came out of the Luster King. But
I remember when Litchie was out there, he had three or four Luster Kings out there, and we were bowling at the format then was you bowl six, B would bowl six, you come back and bowl again. So as soon as you got done with A squad, you'd put your ball in line for however long, and hopefully it got through the line before your next squad, and hopefully it still had compound in it by the time your ball got in there.
Who are some of your favorite guys to bowl against?
Great question.
Oh man, like I always enjoyed bowling the guys that I grew up watching. One of my first tournaments on tour, I got to cross with Earl Anthony. I made the finals. I got to bowl him in match play. Mark Roth, Marshall Holman.
Hell yeah.
Pete Weber, I got to be really good friends with him over the years, and we always had good matches. They're always fast because as soon as we're up, we take our turn, and then we look around and we're like 5 frames ahead of everybody. We're like, great, now what?
Right.
But it was always fun to bowl those guys because it made me see where I needed to get better, and if I did well against them, I knew I was improving. And I always looked for the regionals when they had the tour. Luckily for me, the Midwest region was always strong. Pete bowled almost every regional. Ron Williams was on our region then. Rowdy Morrow, Randy Lightfoot, Leroy Bornhop. All these guys were bowling. Steve Wonderlook. You see these guys all the time, and you make a finals, and you had to beat them. You had to get through it. And if you made the smallest mistake, you knew Wonderlook was going to go up and throw 3 in the 10th to beat you, and you learn how to not do that next time. And it's weird because my first year, I started bowling around 87, and I bowled some regionals before that. I couldn't really make it out of a cut. I struggled a little bit. I went on tour for a full year. I came back, and within a few months, I had won my first regional. So it's like the regionals kind of prepared me a little bit for what to see on tour, but the tour taught me what I needed to do when I got back to start winning, and the two really fed each other well.
That's awesome. Rob, did you want to say something, or can I?
No, go ahead.
I had this question on the tip of my tongue while you were starting the discussion with the regionals. When you say you learn things from watching guys like Pete, can you identify anything during that time between not making a lot and bowling with your idols, and then you have your breakout? What are, no matter how small or big, the things that you saw that they executed better than you that you had to work on?
I think a lot of it was their ability to repeat shots and stay within the game. And Roth, for as much of a power game as he had, he was probably one of the best spare shooters on tour. And he always was keeping himself in position to make that big run. Earl, crossing with him, just watching him make subtle adjustments, stuff that he did with touch, stuff that he would do with speed control, and things that you really can't see from far away. But when you're watching these guys, grab it a little bit different or try to do some stuff just to try to create a different carry, a different shape. Again, that was something we had to do because the equipment was a little bit more limited back then, but we didn't know it because that was still the cutting edge technology at the time.
Sure.
But it was something that I think it's an art form that's gotten lost over the years, is the touch. The reason I'm out here in Detroit right now is because we're the NAIA college tournament is here, and I've been helping coach a college team for the last few years, and trying to get them to understand grabbing it a little bit less or touching it a little bit different at the bottom is kind of foreign to some of them right now. And it's something that, it's just part of the element that we're in. It's part of the environment. So watching those guys do that was amazing.
It is a different game now, and now you let your equipment, make the adjustments. I mean, not even people moving their feet in the lanes that often. I mean, you just pick up a different ball and get a different reaction out of it. But you mentioned Earl, and we always give Johnny crap because Johnny loved Earl, but hated watching him bowl because of his boring style and release. But
well, no, wait. I started that because we did a good, bad, and ugly, and I didn't understand amateur style here, Steve. You got to remember, this is the guy who just shows up once a week and throws his 3 games and goes home.
Okay.
Or goes to the pub and goes home.
There you go.
Oh, by the way, let me tell you a story about Johnny.
So when I didn't get it. It looked like the guy threw an 80-pound bowling ball because it looked like it had about 8 revs to it.
Right.
For Ocho. But my God, the pins were annihilated. Or he put it on the same dot every time, no matter what the condition was.
All right,
so
listen.
He clearly did something right. And it was just a basic and bocce ball style, and man, the guy knocked down pins. So I did that, and then I come to find out JP is like, oh, exactly.
42 titles in a short period of time. I mean, I'm sure he did something right.
All right, so listen. I'm glad that you said John likes Earl. I mean, here's my completely skewed reason, and again, it's an opinion, just an opinion. My idols growing up on that left side of the lane are the guy who lives up the street, Parker Bone III.
Yep.
The guy who's in the living room right now, because I'm in Jackson and Mom and Dad's. I got John Mazza, Ricky Ward, Jason Couch, Steve Cook, Andy Nyer, for Christ's sake. Just throw him in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Just of Richie Wolf. These are all the lefties that I think look like beautiful getting to the line.
Right.
After mentioning all of those guys, when I go back and watch guys like Earl, or I watch guys like Mike Scroggins or Rick Lawrence or Chris Hayes.
No, there's a big difference. That's not right.
Poor Scroggins. We can never get him on the show.
Guys do.
But that's not right to say Earl and then Mike Scroggins and then
why?
That's a big because
the only guy who if you don't know anything about them is which one hooks it more.
If you look strictly at the ball roll.
Right.
Which one knocks the pins down more?
I would rather watch Steve Cook and Jason Couch yell at each other and be beautiful.
Totally get it.
Watch Parker stick it. I like to watch Ricky Ward throw a messer. Mike Albee. Mike Albee was the one that figured out a way to be as pretty as the other lefties, but do it even more gently. But just aggressively enough that it still looked awesome.
And it was so good to see him bowling this weekend on the show. That was cool to see.
Speaking of that, how awesome. Yeah. And I talked to him at USBC's last year, Steve. He says he bowls 3 games a year, and it's USBC's.
I think he's secretly practicing at his house when the lights are off. He looked pretty good.
He's one of the best ever, as if we didn't know that.
Yeah. And you mentioned Richie Wolf. I mean, he's another one that I thought should have won a lot. And he had such a good, solid game. And he just never got the potential that I thought he could have.
So just so I'm clear, we're still knocking Earl Anthony, right?
Yes.
Is that what we're doing right now?
As gently as possible.
I just want to make sure for
One of
straight
the
up five
absolute
customers.
greatest that's ever lived, if not the greatest.
We're still beating the shit out of him, right?
I don't have 42 PBA. I don't have 43 PBA caches. I don't think I have 4 PBA caches. So I'm not crapping on Earl the Pearl. I'm just saying he's ugly to watch. I'd rather watch.
Honestly, Steve, this really came out on a goof of we did a good, bad, and ugly, and I said I don't understand that whole Earl Anthony swing and his elbows bent like he's about to haul a chicken over a barbecue or something. And Johnny went, "Oh my God, that's what I think too." And then sure enough, the floodgates opened, and
here we go.
It wasn't Ocho's intention, but I bring
Meanwhile, he was my hero growing up.
Line is somebody like this is horrible, but somebody's leading their walker to go to the restroom, and like one of the tennis balls kicks off, so they fall forward into the sink. That's what I think is going to happen as he's approaching the line every time. I like what Chuck just said about the smiley face ball. Congrats to Walter.
I saw that.
Hey, Walter tray bomb with a smiley face.
Two-handed plastic ball. What can't he do?
Hey, real quick, is it possible that Earl Anthony was not governed and threw an 80-pound bowling ball? Is that possible? Is there something that we could do conspiracy-wise? Given what everyone's already saying now.
I don't know. I mean, they didn't check for lead in the balls back then. So I don't know.
Like, what if it was 28 pounds? But you can't. Clearly, it's going to go through those pins. Just saying. Mark it down. When we get Jesse the Body Ventura to do the conspiracy theory, did Earl Anthony throw 16-pound or 15-pound bowling balls?
He didn't have guns like you, Oach, so I don't think he
Look, I'm a Second Amendment advocate. I can't help it. It's my fault.
He was in his 30s and 40s when he won his titles. I mean, God, man, he couldn't throw that hard.
Not to mention, he was also a professional baseball player.
Yeah.
Pitcher, as a matter of
fact.
Right.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Earl Anthony was?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man.
So he figured out how to throw overhand and underhand.
He really is one of the absolute greatest talents ever. And if not the greatest of all time in this sport, certainly the greatest of his generation.
I mean, I struck out 10 batters, 11 batters when I pitched 10-year-old All-Star. So let's
get back to the star of the show. I'm just
saying. The greatest athletes. July 4th, 1984. I struck out 11 batters.
I just don't like watching you bowl.
Sorry, Mike Scroggins.
All right, we're done bashing Earl Anthony. Next segment, Rob.
All right, who's next? We got
Great
Rob,
job, guys. Great job, guys. Can we intro with a sponsor at least for the next segment?
What year did you stop the national tour?
It was 2011, I believe. That was the last World Series that I bowled. And part of that was I had just started a job with the distributor. I worked for Classic Products. And
gotcha.
The exempt tour was kind of not really winding down, but it was getting harder to justify staying out there for myself. I mean, I was getting up there a little bit in age, and an opportunity came about for me to transition into the business side of it, doing sales for Classic. And they were nice enough to let me finish my exemption off for that year. So I bowled all the tournaments I was exempt for. But at that point, it was getting to the point where it was harder to keep up. And we were starting to see that transition. Belmo was out there, and we were starting to see more of that type of lane play come in, which I just worked all those years to get rid of that. And I didn't want to go back.
What did you think when you first saw a guy like Belmo with all his success?
At first, I mean, he's actually progressed quite a bit, because I mean, earlier when he didn't he win the plastic ball tournament in Long Island? That was did he win that one? I know he made the show there. Yeah, so he had. I think he's evolved quite a bit. I mean, he's definitely gotten a lot smoother, and I like watching him get to the line, because his ball roll to me looks more normal. I mean, his tilt and his rotation, it's readable. Simonson has the same thing. Some of the tilt you see on some of these two-handers, it's like tipped down a little bit to where it's almost spinning down toward the lane, which to me, it's hard to see that. It's hard to read the lane.
It's a little flying saucery almost.
A little bit.
Like guys like a Zach Wilkins, or maybe even like a Packy Hanrahan, like Matt.
Or even The guy that just won a couple weeks ago, he had a little bit more of a negative tilt. Boog, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, our last guest.
You see, his is going down a little bit more, and I see Belmo going a little bit more traditional. Simonson going that way. I can relate to that more because I like watching that ball reaction. I think I can read that a little bit better.
Sure.
But watching, again, helping the college kids out, you see a ton of two-handers now. Junior bowlers, you see a ton of them. Some of them are not as good yet, and some of them really have potential. But watching a lot of them think that they really need that left hand to create the revs, and talking to Belmo and Simo, their left hand really does nothing to it except guide the ball. So I've got a couple pictures of both of them at the point of release in my phone that they look exactly like everybody else at the point of release. And that's what I try to show these kids when they're learning. It's like, we got to get your hand in that position, but we don't want to tip that over too much. Try to get something a little bit more readable. But again, I mean, the success is still there. These guys are still bowling great with that type of role, and it's not that it's a good or a bad thing, but it's just I like watching more of the shape that I can relate to.
I agree with you there too.
Well, the left hand would just create more of a spinning effect rather than a roll, right? Like that
I think that's what tips it down. If they hit it with the left, that tips the whole axis down to where the if you put a piece of tape on it, it would be facing the lane.
And
more.
that's how I again, amateur status. I think like flying saucer, like you almost see like a third, like Close Encounters of a Third Kind kind of like spin,
or maybe more like a full roller type without the thumb in it.
Right.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, Oach, and obviously definitely what you're saying there, Steve. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a traditional readable roll, and does it hold true? Because Simo and Belmo,
well, it has to, because they're knocking the pins down.
And even guys like Troop, even though Troop is like a little bit more gentle, he's got
that roll too.
Also, so it's amazing that even with the two hands, for everybody listening, that's a two-hander, because half the population is now. The traditional ways are still reigning supreme.
That's exactly what it is. Look at their hand. They're under the ball. They're completely under the ball. And depending on the conditions, of course, like Troop, like the last couple tournaments, he almost took his hand out of it and just kind of popped it out, but kept under it and let the ball do the work. Really, let it roll how it's supposed to, which is, I guess, what you guys are talking about: reading the lane and.
For sure.
Getting forward and facing the pocket. That this is where I don't know what I'm saying. That's
way more predictable front to back.
Right.
And I think Simonson and even Belmo are so good at backing their hand out of it. I mean, Simo can change his rev rate a little bit to where you can really see him float it, even though he's hitting it with two hands. You can see some shots he can put more on it than others, and he's really good at the touch part of it.
Absolutely.
Clearly, the game throw it straight almost. It seems like that one tournament a couple weeks ago.
Steve, that's a great question for you. So every bowler has an A game, a B game, a C game, but you guys being the best of the best, you're great at all of them. But where ideally, like your first shot of practice at a PBA event, where do your feet want to go first? Where is your actual comfort zone, or do you even have one?
I think. When we know what the pattern is ahead of time, I have an idea of where I want to see the ball shape at, and I'll try to go there first. So on a shorter pattern, I'm going to try to be a little bit closer to the gutter because I think that's where the break point's going to be. The longer patterns, I'll be a little bit deeper just to see what I got. But, I mean, my comfort zone is still kind of like, standing 15, 16, trying to go like 8 to 5 and just trying to see what I got, see where that – I personally try to stay as far right as I can at the beginning because then I feel like I always have room to move accordingly. I feel like if I start too deep too soon, it kind of cuts some of the lane out for me and it doesn't give me much places to move to. But sometimes that will hurt me because I'll be out there a little bit farther from where everybody else is and then my next move is way bigger and I'll get trapped sometimes.
So is it harder to move right than it is to move left sometimes for you? You want to start right, work your way in, and then figure out your track line, I guess?
That's kind of what my thought process is. And there's a lot of times that I'll actually be going back right as the tournament goes on and just try
as
to
you get the hang spot or something.
Exactly. My instinct is to do that, but it's not always the right move, especially with today's game.
What led you to become a coach?
Well, I have two kids that I tried to help them bowl as they were getting older, and as they got into high school, we didn't have a high school program where we went, and one of the other coaches had gotten a program together, so I decided to help them with as long as my kids were there, I was helping the program. And even after they graduated, I still helped. And as they moved into the collegiate part of it, I didn't really do much with them while they were in school, so much per se. But my daughter was going to St. Ambrose in Iowa, and there were some opportunities that came up with the JV team where they needed a coach, and they asked me to fill in. And I kind of got hooked on it from that point because I was able to kind of help the teams a little bit. I was able to kind of lend some knowledge to it and maybe help them see the lane better. I always thought I had a pretty good eye for reading ball reaction and trying to help them line up. So that kind of progressed to, as they moved to a different school, I kind of helped that program and I kind of follow them around. But I've been with St. Francis and Joliet for a few years now, and that's where they finished their schools at. And I've been with them for a few years after that because I feel like it's close enough to home. I can help the program, and I really like helping the teams try to get better.
The reason I ask is we had Bakes on the show a few weeks ago, and not many people can make that transition from being a pro to being a coach. Some guys just aren't cut out for it, and it takes obviously everybody has a passion for the game, but not everybody has the ability to be a good coach. So I just want to kind of wonder, what was your mindset when you were first asked? Obviously, you coach your kids, but I mean, when you were first asked to coach after you were coaching them, were you like, sure, let's do it? You enjoyed it at that point.
Absolutely, and it's like I'm not even in the same category as somebody like Baker, for sure. But the little bit that I can bring as far as I don't want to say basic, but more lane play, surface management, how to see the lane a little bit better, and we do a lot with physical stuff and spare shooting. I mean, that's the biggest thing, especially. I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter what the scoring pace is. If it's a low scoring pace, you're going to have to make your spares. But if it's a high scoring pace, it's just as important, because somebody that goes 6-bagger and 9-out sheet is not going to win to somebody that made their spares. So
right.
It's even more important, and it's frustrating when they're not doing well at it, but we're working on it.
Was it difficult for you to try to teach the two-handers since it was something that you weren't really familiar with?
Fortunately for me, I work more with the ladies team, so we don't have as many of them yet. Okay. But we are seeing more and more of them show up, and with me having the reference of like Belmo and Simonson and some of the guys there, I can definitely help them. Even the guys that we've got a lot of two-handers on our team too, and we just try to help them see the lane better and just try to some different stuff with touch. Just try to do something where it's not just grab it harder and move in. It's
right.
Not always the answer.
That's true.
Sometimes.
How much bowling do you do now?
Not a ton, but I'm trying to get a little bit more. I still bowl 2 or 3 leagues a week, and I'll bowl some tournaments on the weekends. I'm trying to bowl some more regionals. The PBA 50 stuff, I never really bowled as much of it, just because with the job at Classic, our season, even though the bowling season ends in April, and that's pretty much when the PBA 50 stuff starts, we're in prep work for all of our trade shows and all of our Bowl Expo stuff and a lot of stuff that happens. So I don't have as many opportunities. I could still get away and bowl some, but it's like I would like to get out there for a few weeks and actually try it. I've been trying to get in a little better shape. I've been bowling some more stuff now. So I had actually already committed to bowl the Tournament of Champions before they notified me that I was getting in the Hall of Fame, which was kind of cool. So I was going to be there anyway. And I'm like, all right, I'll stay 2 more days. But
oh, darn.
I know. All right.
Twist my arm. All right.
Yeah. So I bowled it last year and I didn't do very well, but it was pretty cool having a front row seat to what some of these guys can do and bring some of that back to some of the teams that we help coach. And it's pretty cool.
My last question was, it's a good segue. Did you expect Tom Clark to come up and tell you that? Did you have any were there any rumors out there that, you might be part of a vote or anything like that, or it just took you by surprise?
Completely by surprise.
Cool.
I know this year was this was the first year that they added this veterans category to it, which was 4 players that didn't quite meet the criteria, the 10 titles, or I think it's 5 with 2 majors. I had 7 with 1 major, and
it's close enough for me.
But yeah. You also had players like, Robert Smith and Ryan Schaefer, Guppy Troop even, and Rob Learn.
Yeah.
Guys like that definitely had Hall of Fame careers and they deserve to be there. And I mean, Johnny, you know as well as anything, only one shot, one way or the other, can make the difference in winning or losing. And there's so many guys that get there so often. It's hard to win.
Steve, if you go back a couple episodes, I get pretty aggressive with this topic.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that one.
And actually, it actually all spawned from, and I actually remember Stacy Learn was in the chat that night, and a couple, I can't remember who else was there, but and Tom Hess was in the chat tonight, and we were talking about Tom Hess's Hall of Fame induction, and that's what spawned the entire conversation, and then led us into the discussion of the vet category. We started analyzing the tenure. You know, what happens if some of these guys with 8 titles and $1 million in a major had family obligations? What if they tore their meniscus, or what if they're Robert Smith and battled injuries left and right? And then to go and take somebody, or already have somebody like, say, Roy Buckley in the PBA Hall of Fame, or take somebody like Tom Hess, who in my eyes is a Hall of Famer, but is like nowhere near what you guys and the other guys on the ballot have accomplished on the regular PBA tour. I went off on an entire tangent. We all did, but we couldn't be happier that they introduced the category. But in our eyes, it's not the veterans category. It's simply you're a PBA Hall of Famer for performance.
That's it.
And it still is performance. To me, I mean, and it's that performance and the longevity of being out there for all those years is what gets you considered for it. And the fact that so when they announced Tom Hess this year, and then I saw John Weber's getting in, which is awesome, as well. And then Chrismans are also getting in. So at that point, I'm like, you know what? If the veterans category happens, it's probably not going to be this year, because I don't really remember all the years that we've done it that they did more than 3. So I was completely surprised. And he did it at a college tournament we were coaching, and Jason Thomas comes down and asks me, yeah, we want to interview you and your team in between, the lunch break. I'm like, that's fine. I'm like, our head coach is over there. I'm the assistant. He's like, no, we want to talk to you. I'm like, oh, great. I'm like, now he did that in front of our coach. Now he's going to think I'm trying to steal his thunder. So he's like, we just want to do something.
You did.
The PBA. I did. Well, a little bit, but
unintentionally, but you did.
I know. So he just said we want to do kind of the PBA angle that you bowled on tour and you're helping the team. So we started off with some fun questions, and I completely never saw him coming up. I mean, he did a pretty good job of distracting me with the questions, which he did his job. Yeah. But I didn't really see Tom that day. But if I did, it wouldn't have surprised me, because his son bowls for college and he would have been there anyway. So I didn't really even put 2 and 2 together. And the fact that against the names like Schaefer and Smith and Learn, that they voted me in was just amazing. I mean, I never would have saw that coming.
Goosebumps.
I was just saying,
freaking goosebumps right there. Holy shit.
I mean, they're all great too, but I mean, don't ever discount what you did in your career, because I mean, you.
Well, we're all our own worst critic too, but I get it.
And the best part is, I don't think they'll lose the footage on this one.
No, they won't. It's definitely out there forever. I saw it on Facebook.
Might be on X.
I saw it on Facebook, and I was super happy to hear the news. And when he was telling it, did it register, or were you just kind of trying to?
It's
got to be like a "you're full of shit" moment almost.
No.
Like, who the hell is this guy? Come on.
Is this a rib?
I knew that they do that, and actually, it's pretty cool the way they surprise everybody. And I love watching the videos when he does that. And when they had asked me to do the video, I'd be like, oh, that'd be pretty cool if they were telling me I was in the Hall of Fame. I'm like, it's not going to happen this year. I'm like, it's just like things that are going through my head.
Right.
And then when he popped up next to me, it's still kind of like, it threw me. I'm like, well, maybe he's going to say something, or, maybe he just wanted to interrupt. I don't know. But I was completely shocked. So I probably looked more stupid than I felt, but, but it was cool.
Nothing like raw, real shit, man.
Yeah,
I love it. It was a great moment, and I'm glad it took you by surprise. I'm glad you didn't know ahead of time, because you had your natural reaction. But I mean, it's a cool thing, and with the advent of social media, you're always going to have your idiots out there and your detractors, and we deal with them every single week. We have a segment called the Imbecile of the Week. That's how bad some of these people are. But a lot of guys are like, "What? Why is he getting in?" And not doing the research. We had Jeff Riggles light a couple people up in a lot of the bowling forums because they're like, "Why he doesn't have 10 titles? He doesn't. He only has one major." And Jeff's like, "Well, if you read the article, you would have realized that it's a veterans category. So there's different criteria, but a lot of people also want to put an asterisk next to it, and that kind of led me to think like, number one, these guys have never done it.
Steve's juicing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he was on the juice.
Right.
Well, we know Earl's balls had lead in them.
They're heavy, so
Yeah.
we established that.
But I mean, the hall is the hall, and it just kind of leads into what Johnny said. Like, it still means the same to you. It doesn't matter what category it is. They're still recognizing you for your performances and for your career and the success you had, because it's not easy, especially back in your day with all those bowlers and all the games you had to bowl, to make TV shows. And even though you didn't win them all, you still made quite a few appearances on TV as well, which is hard to do.
Yeah, I think I went 20 straight seasons with at least one telecast.
Exactly. So
and at least half a dozen tournament leads, at least, right, Steve?
Yeah, there were several. I mean, the one in Erie when Wiseman beat me was the lead. I think I led in at your dad's tournament in Jersey. I'd led there. I made the show there a couple times.
You made TV there a couple times. Huh?
Yeah, and I can think of plenty of them that it happens. I mean, Peoria and Sebring.
Yeah.
There's others that I ran the ladder, and I was fortunate that the very first show that I made, I was a tournament leader, and I was able to come away with the win. But it doesn't happen very often. Then,
no.
Do you try to put that? Do you pay attention to that noise, or do you just try to put it behind you? I mean, obviously you're going to enjoy it. You're going to be inducted. You're going to get to make a speech. You're going to be enshrined in Akron. But I mean, do you give any credence to what some of the idiots say on social media?
Not really. I mean, it's so easy to sit back and like what Riggle said, if they don't look at all the stats, and it's obviously a career. It's not just a few years. Sure. I think at this point I'm still in the top 15 in the money list for career. So that means there's only 14 people in the history of the tour that ever made more money.
That's right.
It took a while, but I mean, that just shows the longevity of being out there. And I think Schaefer put it best that, that it meant that you had to consistently perform year after year to be able to make to make that consistent earnings and to be able to stay out there. And it's a grind. I mean, we had long formats. My very first year on tour, I think I bowled 36 weeks. Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't bowl well the first year, but
the lifestyle too. I mean, I'm assuming your family wasn't always with you all the time. I mean, I know there were months and months that it was me, mom, and Jamie.
Right.
I mean, but to be able to maintain that lifestyle, in a hotel room every night, even before cell phones, for Christ's sake, making planned times to call from the room or let you know where you are on your driving journey, and It's,
I remember sitting in the lobby of the hotel room, standing in line with all the guys waiting for the payphones because we were all there.
It's so much more than just what we see on the lanes, and to be able to do that for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I mean, it's a true testament to how it's understanding why you guys are the best in the world, and I think that's kind of the culmination of what the hall actually means is you're surrounded by fellow people that understand the journey and what it takes and decided to do it anyway and did it as one of the best ever. So
yeah, it's a commitment. I mean, it was a lifelong deal.
Hell yeah.
Well,
but
Steve,
I wouldn't trade it.
No, obviously not. Thank you for being here. We absolutely had a pleasure talking to you. I love talking to guys I grew up watching on TV. And it was just a real treat. Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to let people know what's going on with you?
I'm just bowling as many tournaments as I can. Like I said, I started working for Classic Products. I've been bowling on regional stuff. I'm still follow Phil around, so I'm with Radical. I'm still back with the Brunswick guys. So it's that's probably been most of my career. Like I said, your dad gave me the first contract I had with Brunswick. I was there for a long time. And then stuff got shook up a little bit, but we ended up back there. So it's been a lot of fun. So now just coaching the collegiate stuff now. Got some regionals this weekend and got other stuff to bowl. So
We just scratched the surface here. We got to dive deep next. We got to have him on next time, and at some point and talk about the tournaments and talk about the anxiety and the stress. And like that. This is not a one-parter for this guy. There's no way.
Oh no! Anytime you guys want.
It's always
I gotta get a new laptop though, because my hair is a lot lighter on this one than it was on the video you showed me. So I think I need a new camera.
It's definitely the camera for sure.
Yeah,
my hair looks the same no matter what I do. I don't know what's going on. I'm good.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for being here, brother. Good luck with the team this weekend, and we'll definitely have you on again in the future. Thank you for giving us your time.
I had a great time, guys. Thanks. Good seeing you all.
Steve.
Awesome,
thank you.
Steve.
Yep. Have a good night. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
I'll say why Dad signed Steve, because he watched Steve bowl. He watched.
He knew talent. I said talent knows talent, man.
And the one thing that always defined Brunswick, especially in that era, was we had the classiest staffers, and Steve is nothing but class on and off the lanes. And I'm telling you right now, without even asking Dad, that's why he signed Steve.
Could be. That's gotta be. I wouldn't doubt it.
The glasses and the hair. It was definitely his. The way
it looked like it was combed. It was Inspector Willoughby like. Somebody go fact check Inspector Willoughby, put it on the Straight Up 5 Facebook page. You'll see what I'm talking about. It was perfect.
Yeah. Totally.
Sorry, I'm just gonna Google Inspector Willoughby right now.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, he lost speed too, so maybe we can put him up.
Are you kidding me? Are you guys really don't
somebody
chat knows Inspector Willoughby?
Who's chat?
Oh shit, maybe you're right. Hold on, let me get a picture.
See? Go ahead.
You just don't know my name? Is it a person? A place?
Inspector Willoughby. He was a cartoon guy. He's like a Woody Woodpecker guy. He was a Yogi Bear
guy.
So
like Inspector Gadget?
Come on. Rob, don't you have a picture?
I'm working on it.
Want to see pictures? I'll show you pictures.
Oh,
pictures.
Oh, nope.
Everybody knows Ocho knows pictures.
All right, well, anyway.
Just before you end the show, just come on, Rob.
I'm pulling it. Look, things don't work.
I know you're pulling it all the time. There we go. Now get the frontal.
0.
That's I'm telling you, he combed it just like him. It was, and when he would talk, just the mustache would just do like this.
He kind of looks like Robert Muster, Mr. 900.
He does kind of look like. Oh, we can't forget that.
Right.
So, in case you guys want to go check it out, it's still going on. The good old Union County, Illinois Fair, nothing compares to the unmanscaped hay as well.
That's true. That's very true. Uncircumcised, unmanscaped.
Every girl's dream.
Speaking of which, Johnny, we got to pick a winner for next. We're going to announce a winner next week for who wins one of Johnny's balls.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So you guys still have a chance if you want.
I'm sorry that happened to you, that you lost.
I can't believe we made it through an entire show without me talking about nationals, which is amazing.
You had such a good. Well, next week.
Yeah, we'll do it next week. This is wonderful. On behalf of Lucas and I, thanks again for all of our viewers for being here. And Derica, thank you again for the chicken.
It is a cool chicken. Yeah, hopefully we don't hear that noise ever again.
Don't worry, I'm going to open next show with a 45 seconds.
That's the new intro
of the chicken.
By the way, just a quick spoiler
Troy,
alert.
thank you for being here again, Troy, as always.
Just want to announce a future guest we're going to have after the tour wraps up. Kevin McCune has agreed to be on our show, but
if anybody's seen Porky's, that's kind of like that. When Porky
Did you say Kevin McCune?
Yes, Kevin McCune will be on our show. He's a little busy, obviously, with the tour, but he said probably maybe after the World.
Steve beat his dad in one of the shows.
After the TOC, he said,
"Oh, not McCune. I'm sorry.
I'd like to talk to Kevin about baseball, even more so than bowling. So that would be awesome.
I'm sure he'll talk about whatever you want. But after the TOC, we'll find time to get him on. But he definitely wants to come on the show. So, but yeah, next week I would love to talk about Vegas and Stephanie. Stephanie Sheridan has been the subject of some attention as of late as well.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can have her on.
A while since we've had her on. I would definitely like to. Between again, I'm a Jersey boy now. I bowl league with Carson Lukosius, who just won her second PWBA title or regional title, and on that same show in Delaware was my doubles partner Stephanie. It would be, and Stephanie also, and I know she wasn't happy with her performance, but she threw it wonderfully at USBCs. So you can obviously tell why she murdered them at the regional leading up to it. Yeah. But I would like to kind of talk to both of them because after speaking with Carson about it, she had both Mike and Kara, her parents, there to see this win, whereas she only had one parent at the previous one. So she said that was like she was a little bit choken up by that, which was awesome. And she's been bowling great for so long. But Steph, I want to get her perspective because Steph was finding her game and then she got it at the right time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's two different reasons for the success. And I like to hear it from two hungry bowlers, and what better two to start it with?
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. I will lean on you to make that happen.
Well, you can do that when you're not strong, and it sounds like due to
You'll
your
be his friend.
problem,
Yeah.
I'll be his friend.
He'll help you carry on.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I do have to. I do have
You are
to.
not
That is Bill Withers, right?
What? I'm sorry. What was that?
Just calling me, brother. That's Bill Withers.
Oh yeah.
You're just leaning on me, Oach.
When you need a friend? I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I said, is that Bill Withers? And you're like,
It might be. I don't fucking know, man. I don't know everything. I know 99% of things. I don't know that.
You know every Steelers
You knew the
score.
song. You didn't know the artist of the song we were singing just now?
Not on that one, no. Fuck that. Because
That's all
it's
you had to
stupid.
say. I
Because
finally got
if the movie didn't come out, the
After
song
shows
would
I
have still
pay.
been buried.
All right, that's enough. We're getting stupid.
All right, yeah, no, we're out of here. Guys, thanks for showing up tonight. Thank you for joining us on our YouTube channel as well as our
Pay attention
Twitter.
to Apple iTunes and leave us a 5-star review.
That's a great point, Ocho. That's a great
Yeah,
point.
it's something you never say.
It's true. No, it's true. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we'll be back next week. Appreciate you guys. And fuck you, Doc Sullivan. So, yeah, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. You can follow the show on Twitter at Straight Up 5 Pod. Follow Johnny Jr. at JPJR07. Follow Rad Rob at Rad Rob Gaming. And follow Dr. Ocho at the Dr. Ocho. Got a question for Johnny? Send your questions to straightUp5podcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Straight Up 5 with Johnny Petraglia Jr. Right here on the Rad Rob Radio Network.
If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.